California faces pileup of unsold homes. We've just got a glut of homes on the market. Couldn't happen to a nicer state, right? What's causing this? Let's get into it. Here we go. California isn't the only state that this is happening. It's happening in all markets. But you've got affordability issues in California where it's even greater across the board because nobody can afford a home. You've got super high home prices and you've got mortgage rates that are precluding literally millions of buyers that are sitting on the sidelines from jumping in. Those mortgage rates drop down to a specific number. Well, the NRA has a number, National Association of Realtors has a number, and it's about 6%. You hit 6%, boom. I think you've got whatever XYZ percentage of buyers that are going to jump in. Does that make sense? Yeah, because it's an affordability issue. Home prices have continued to rise and mortgage rates have not dropped because of inflationary concerns and job market and economics. Just hasn't panned out for rates to drop. And rates have been high. They've climbed really rapidly July of 2022. It's a 3-year run we're on. And this is just the way it goes. If you have interest rates that buyers can't take advantage of to the point of buying, they can't afford, what's going to happen? They're not going to buy. And you've got sellers with mortgage rates in the 3%. Why would they sell? Well, now they're getting to that point where people who need to move, whatever, for whatever reason, people die, put them on the market. And yet there's not enough buyers out there. And so those homes sit. They just sit. It's happening here in Seattle as well. Kind of specific to each individual market. But let's get into we're going to read a couple of articles. California's housing market is experiencing a buildup of unsold homes. Mike Simonson, the chief economist at real estate platform Compass, said on a post on X that there are currently 37% more unsold single-family homes in the market in California than last year, a level not seen since 2018. So what was going on in 2017 and 2018? We had basically recovered from the Great Recession, right? And been 10 years past. So the housing market was really kind of finding. In 2017, we had a great year. 2017 was a great year. 2018, and, still strong year. But during 2018, we had a little bit of slowdown after 2017. And then 2019, late 2019, we had the pandemic. 2020, all brakes got taken off the market because interest rates dropped as the pandemic hit. So that's why going back to 2018, that's the most recent time that we've had inventory levels this high. The surge in unsold homes signals growing challenges in California's housing market. And you could say that about any big city has dense housing and has prices that are just astronomical. You've got, pricing in Seattle, Vancouver, BC, and Canada, Portland, San Francisco, any of these cities, their pricing is such that with interest rates at around, call it 6.8%, call it 7%, round up, right? People can't afford $1 million home as entry-level housing. So let's skip down to California's supply of unsold homes has been growing for several years, as has most markets. Simonson queried why this was happening in the state at this moment in time. He pointed out that while other states such as Florida, Texas, and Arizona have seen rising inventory too, the factors behind this are clearer as these are areas now grappling with low migration from other states. That massive, massive push to get into a more conservative state that has lower inflation, lower taxes, cheaper real estate, that isn't happening as much. A lot of that has already taken place. And also, Florida, Texas, and Arizona have cheaper housing prices than California. So they're not impacted quite as much, but you'll hear stories about builders in Texas when I was down in Oklahoma, which is basically North Texas, right? Builders offering some pretty great concessions to get people in. to kind of offset some of these higher mortgage rates, because during the pandemic, when you could get a mortgage at 2.75%, people went out in droves and bought homes. You know, what normally would be a 2 or 3 year cycle of business maybe a 5 or 7 year cycle of business got compacted into like a year or two. Just so much volume of activity was happening because people were want to take advantage of those rates. And sellers are still sitting on the sidelines because they don't want to give up a 3% mortgage. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't either. You know what I mean? It's just, that's kind of how it goes. However, he noted that California has dealt with negative net migration for some time. California is losing population. They are losing population. You're losing In-N-Out Burger headquarters. I mean, you've got a lot of different businesses leaving California because it's so expensive. You've got some of the highest state income taxes. You've got inflation taking place. You've got some of the highest gasoline prices. You've got literally the governor, podcaster Newsom, is scrambling around right now. It's one of my stories today, right now, trying to get a buyer for the Valero refinery because they're shutting down. They're like, nope, we're out of California. We can't make a go of it here. You guys are so anti-fossil fuel that, hey, go screw yourself. We're not selling this plant. We're not idling it. We're closing it down. And that, along with another Phillips 66 refinery, it's going to reduce California's ability to produce their own special blend of gasoline by about 17%, and you're going to have a massive spike. There was a Republican from California who said, hey, look for $12 a gallon gasoline. And that's why Governor Newsom, podcaster Newsom, is literally scrambling around with an executive order in California to try and come up with a buyer. The California Energy Commission is looking for a buyer for one of their refineries because their own policy, their progressive policy, has driven these refineries to say, no, we're closing. Can you imagine? Hey, would you like to come to California? I've got a slightly used refinery for you. That is a tough sell. Oh, California? Isn't that the market where everybody's leaving because there's no future for fossil fuels? Isn't Chevron leaving California? They're moving their headquarters to Houston because California, with your progressive ideology on fossil fuels, you've constricted the ability of these big refineries to do business. And now you're just being spanked in the ass because of your terrible ideology and your terrible ability to work with what is a very necessary component, gasoline, the production of gasoline. And now that you're facing down a real supply crisis, all of a sudden, oh, guys, we got to find a buyer. We got to get a buyer up in here, stat. Hey, anybody want to buy a refinery in California? I mean, what a tough sell. What a tough sell. That bad boy's going to get shut down. However, he noted that California's dealt with negative migration. Yep. And unsold inventory has only recently started rising. And that's because you've had enough buyers in most of these marketplaces to take down a percentage of the inventory. We've seen that in our markets. So you got XYZ buyers and sellers, and they've basically been, okay, yeah, we're going to work this one out. We'll cut a deal. We'll make a deal. And they're getting enough homes sold. But I think there's enough, concern with the economy that a lot of markets are seeing a holdback of buyers sitting on the sidelines, and that's why you've got inventory building up. California unsold inventory is now back up to levels not seen in 8 years, over 37% last year. And that is not all that huge. That's not crazy. Simonson did not provide his own guesses as to the reasons. It's because your pricing is so high and your relative affordability isn't there. So nobody can buy a damn home. When a home comes on the market, nobody can buy it. That's pretty simple. Nobody wants to go out there because, oh, good Lord, that means I'm saying the quiet part out loud, which is, real estate prices are too high. And I'm a real estate guy. And I say real estate prices are too high, but what does that mean? Yeah, how are you going to bring them down? Well, if this stuff sits on the market for long enough, then you're going to see price corrections. But I think what you'll see is interesting from these professionals is that they are, and I agree with them to a certain extent, there's still enough buyers in the marketplace to offset a lot of this inventory. And so prices aren't dropping dramatically. Sellers aren't having to drop their prices dramatically. And so you're seeing a slowdown of appreciation. You're not seeing a drop in prices, but a slowdown in appreciation. Maybe you've got 2-3% appreciation a year. Well, compared to a couple of years ago, that's like negative 10% relatively, right? So there were California job market is deteriorating faster than other places, and that several demand-side cash programs are ending this year. He's likely referring to government programs that help buyers. That's not what's going on. That's a very small percentage of the marketplace. With expenses related to purchasing a home, which are especially crucial in high-cost markets like California. What it is across the board, people can't afford a damn house. I mean, when I look at houses in my neighborhood, I live in Bellevue, which is basically Narnia. It's like, what are we doing here? That house is worth that. We had a little Rambler, a little single-level home. I think it was 1,200 square feet. It abutted a busy road, and it came on the market at, I think, $1.3 million, a couple of blocks from my house. It's like, who can afford that? Why would you want to afford that? And it wasn't anything special. It was 3-bedroom, I think 1.5 bath. You can have noise in your backyard from a busy street. It's too expensive for most people to be able to afford. But if you want to live in a really nice neighborhood, you're going to pay way over $1 million, and that's just out of reach for most people. $700,000 is out of reach for most people. With the way that the job market is and that the way that income levels haven't followed up with housing prices. Realtor.com report from May, it also reported the active home listings in California surged over about 65,000 in April, a 50% increase compared with the previous year. I think what you had is a bunch of circumstances catch up with the marketplace, and people can't afford. People are freaked out. They're freaked out. We're going to go into World War III. Not hearing much about Iran anymore, are you? No. Kind of dropped a couple of bombs on them and pretty quiet over there. You're not hearing that. But what you're hearing is people are just concerned. You've got job markets that are shedding jobs. You've got tech markets that are shedding jobs. The real estate listings website pointed to the high prices of homes as a major factor. There's a price at which buyers can't engage, and we are there. 6% mortgage rates? Okay. What if they stay at 7% for a while? We've got a stagnant market, and that's, I think, what you're going to have. Going to have something hit the economy. It's something crazy for interest rates to drop. I mean, you wait long enough, you'll get one of those. Here's a comment. It's very realistic to expect that based on more than 50% year-over-year inventory increase in some of these California markets, you're going to see a big slowing in home price growth over the next 12 months. See, home price growth. We're expecting it to grow. Well, you're going to see that, level off. So big slowing in home price growth, not drop in housing prices. We haven't seen that yet. And some of that's been because we haven't had enough inventory to date to really impact how much is on the market, meaning that buyers have to chase down or sellers have to chase down other homes. You got a home at $1 million, it's not selling, but one at $950 is, well, you drop it down to $950. Now the next guy comes in, lists it at $950 and it's sitting, got to drop it down to $900. That kind of thing goes on. When that happens in large scale, like it did during the Great Recession, that's when you have house prices drop. And that's due to there's a ton of stuff on the market. And if you want to get yours sold, you're going to drop that price. Because, it's never about marketing. It's just not. That has a small component to it. But the very worst real estate brokerage can toss a home on a listing in the MLS. And if it's priced right, it'll sell. Has crappy pictures, no video, it'll sell. Because at the end of the day, buyers don't care. They want a deal. Give me that house. Don't care who sells it. So all this stuff about I've got the best marketing out there, that's just all lipstick, right? That's just all, smoke and mirrors of, this is what I can do for you, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's good real estate brokers, and then there's, moderate. It's like any industry. And then there's some really crappy ones. There are some really crappy ones. Even the really crappy ones sell real estate. Right? So what happens next? Some housing analysts are watching to see if the surge in unsold inventory will put downward pressure on home prices in California. I think that will happen. To what extent? That's where we kind of don't really know. And is it going to be a big drop? Well, what are interest rates going to do? So many questions, so few answers, right? Let's check out this one. So this one is, here's the magic mortgage rate that will push Americans to buy. And this is a survey. Got interest rates hovering close to 7%. Total number of unsold homes, including those under contract, was up 20%. You get the picture. Inventory's going up. According to The Economist with National Association of Realtors, a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage of 6% would make the median home price affordable for about 5.5 million more households, including 1.6 million renters. And then, boom, they enter the marketplace. Inventory gets absorbed. We're back off to the races. Do rates stay there long enough? I mean, you can't really predict this stuff. You don't know. I mean, who would have predicted the pandemic, right? I think a pandemic's going to come along and rates are going to drop out of sight. If a 30-year fixed mortgage rate hits 6%, about 10% of those additional households would likely buy a home over the next 12 to 18 months, according to the survey. It's about 550,000 households. So, I mean, it makes sense. You've got these price points where at 6% in these specific markets, people can go in and buy a home. They can afford to, whereas now they literally don't have the purchasing power. They don't, the ratios don't work. The underwriting ratios don't work for them to purchase a home. They don't make enough money relative to the pricing of the marketplace. And that's where a lot of folks are at. Rates could dip to that projected home buying sweet spot of 6% by 2026. Now they could, or they could go up. We don't really know. So that would drive home sales by 14%. Here's the markets that would benefit the most. This is interesting. Atlanta, Dallas, Minneapolis, Cleveland, Kansas City, Missouri would be among the top markets seeing the largest uptick in home sales if rates were to drop to 6%. And the reason for that is their pricing levels. Here's the map. So their pricing levels are such that their population's going to get the biggest bang for their buck. All right, now with that 6% mortgage, we can go we can purchase what was unobtainable has now dropped in our ability to purchase. It's go time. And that's because of price levels of Dallas, Texas. It's just cheaper. It's become way more expensive than it was, but it's still way cheaper than a California. So let's move on to my market. So I said this is happening in a lot of different markets. This is MLS information that I get sent out to as a broker. And what I wanted to look at was, interest rates are about 6.77%. So round up, you're damn near 7%. And that's what's, that's what's kind of driving things. There was a 38.82% increase year over year in the total number of properties listed for sale in our MLS. Now, our MLS is one of the largest MLSs in the United States. We cover most of Western Washington, portions of Eastern Washington, and it's just got county after county after county, whereas in a lot of states, you've got individual MLSs. But we're kind of Washington State is kind of on its own. To the north of us, we got Canada. To the south of us, we've got Oregon, but Oregon's its own deal, right? And Oregon's only got a couple of big cities. You got Eugene, you got Portland. In Washington, that's why so many of the MLSs have been absorbed by our big MLS. So that's what we're talking about. So So here were the counties that had the biggest inventory increases. You've got Snohomish County. That is just to the north of King County here. 50% increase. Oh. Now, population in Snohomish County isn't that big. Not a lot of people. So not a lot of homes typically on the market. Doesn't take that many more homes to kind of really make those numbers just spike. We got King County at 46%. King County is the most heavily populated county in Washington State, up 46%. Huge increase. And, what do we have? Adams County. We got a couple other counties you've never heard of, but basically same thing. You got Columbia County inventory up 70%. Again, a small population market. Grant County, these are east of the mountains, 61%. Those are some massive increases that are impacting the marketplace, because these markets haven't seen this kind of activity or lack of activity and number of homes on the market. Now, take a look at this. Highest median sales, King County. The median housing price is $913,000, damn near $1 million. So half of the homes are below that, half of the homes are above that. $900,000. All right, 20% down, you need to come up with $180,000, probably another 20, 25 in closing costs, couple hundy, and then you have a mortgage of how many thousands and thousands of dollars, 6, 7, 8 grand a month, depending on, what you put down, what kind of rate you get based on your credit. It's a chunk. It's a massive chunk. And I'm not a mortgage guy, so don't rely on my numbers there. That's why I'm kind of rapid firing them out. But it's super expensive. So you give them all your cash, and then you take on this mortgage, and this mortgage is just like, whoa, what are we doing? You got to be making a couple $100,000 to afford any of this stuff. Even Snohomish County, which is to the north of King County, median housing price, $750,000, $775,000. That is just way unaffordable for so many people in the population. So you are really seeing a market of the haves and the have-nots, because the haves are going to be able to afford a home and the haves are not. And that affordability gap just becomes greater and greater and greater. So what we're talking about here at 6% mortgages, that's great and all, but long term, we've got housing prices that don't make any sense. Now, if you got a house, great, because you're on the gravy train. You're going to be able to sell, pick up some equity, and move to where you want. But getting that first step in, brutal for kids, brutal for my son's generation. It's like, unless your parents are wealthy, how are you going to figure out how to save for this? I know it can be done because I'm seeing it be done. But there's a real affordability issue here. It's pretty nuts. So bottom line is, yep, California's got a big glut of properties, but it's not alone. And you're seeing this in other states. It's just that in California, in states like Washington and other states that are very expensive, New York, the average buyer isn't able to buy, and they're sitting on the sidelines going, hey, this is great that we've got all these, homes to look at, but they're too darn expensive. We can't afford them. And we're sitting on the sidelines until things get better, meaning mortgage rates drop. When will that happen? It's a crapshoot, right? It's a crapshoot. Who knows? Will they drop? We don't know. You just got to kind of be along for the ride. You can't pretend you're driving. Like, I'm going to take us there. I'm going to take us to 4.5% mortgage rate. No, you're not. It's just not happening. You got to react. And so at some point in time, rates will drop, but I'm not holding my breath that that'll be anytime soon. They could also go up. Very big reality, but people don't want to think about that because then that just crushes the housing market even more. But, I've been doing this long enough where you realize things don't always go the way that you want. The housing market isn't going the way that, anybody that's looking on the entry level or even moderate entry level to purchase a home. things have not gone well because prices have continued to go up. So will we see a big drop in prices? I don't think so, because there's still enough buyers out there, even with today's current mortgage pricing, that are buying homes. There's just enough to keep it going, but not have it absolutely do a dive, if that makes sense. So there we are. That's where we sit. We need mortgage rates to drop. I know there's lots of you out there looking to do something, or maybe you're just looking in thinking, geez, how am I ever going to be able to afford this? Yeah, you're not alone. Our market is unaffordable. That's bottom line. I look at housing prices all the time. I look at the deals that come through Summit Properties and I'm like, good Lord, that much for that house? What world are we living in? But then again, I'm an old guy and I'm just, back in my day, you could buy a house for 50 grand. And literally, when I was in college, my buddy and I, we went out and looked at an entire page of homes in the University of Washington district that were under $50,000. It was an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, MLS listing, and it was single line listings. We probably had 25 or 30 homes under $50,000 in Seattle in the University of Washington market. And that would have been 88, 89, something like that. So now those homes are $1 million plus, 1, 2, 1, 3, a lot of them. The wacky market we live in. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe. Hit the notification bell. We drop 2 a day, Monday through Friday, 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. So there's lots to catch up on. Get that notification bell. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again for joining. Bye for now.